So, hello and welcome to the New Gig Podcast. I'm your host, Glen Hodgson, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the CEO of Zenjob, Mr. Frederik Fahning. Good afternoon to you, Frederik. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Glenn. Glad to see you as well. I'm doing well. Quite excited for the next couple of months. We have an interesting last half of the year basically in front of us, but glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, take us through it. Let's start with the beginning. Of all the industries and sectors in the world, why did you choose to go into this sector to start Zenjob? And tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional and personal journey to get here.
I grew up in Hamburg here in Germany, but I somehow always wanted to be an entrepreneur at a certain stage. I do have to admit this got a bit accelerated by meeting a few people in your life. I guess that's what often happens. And instead of understanding better how the other side of the world works, meaning how venture capital is going and flowing into startups, I get to know my two co-founders, Gian and Fritz, and we understood together with our first VC Atlantic here in Berlin fairly early that work is basically very tangible and gigantic problem and market, and we wanted to solve a problem which is big. And we were all coming from our studies and thinking about the fact that it's very complicated to organize work in a seamless and automated way, and that you also are not empowered at all, especially when it comes to flexible, on-demand kind of shifts in work. And we then, try to understand, to do some brainstorm, screened lots of different startups in the world, and we realized, there are lots of solutions when it comes to finding a job in terms of recruiting, but not too many when it comes really to have everything solved in a seamless and automated fashion. We were going to retailers here in Berlin, to gastronomy businesses, but also to universities, and we always asked, when you think about work, what's missing there? And they shared with us that they don't want to deal with anything and that it's supposed to be flexible. And that in the end led us then to develop a platform which still offers you benefits like flexible employmentship, which of course goes hand in hand with, proper salaries, with security at work, with lots of different things, rights and duties you have as an employer and as an employee. And we are fascinated since then. We are doing this now for 7 years. We are here at Zenjob internally around 450 people, and we work with 20, 30, 40,000 talents on our platform together, and lots of different companies, Germany-wide, but also in the Netherlands and UK. And we are still on a vision and on a mission, as we are there just in the beginning, but it's still a very interesting and fascinating topic for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world of work is changing pretty quickly. I mean, can you say a little bit about how the element of technology has facilitated your business and the opportunities that you can provide to talent?
I think, the main driver was really technology in the way that we saw when it comes to really on-demand flexible work. It doesn't really make sense if you do it old school. And we screened the market and we saw that at least in Germany, this is around 98% paper-driven. And if there is some software, then it is just an internal accounting software or anything related to HR. But there is nothing where there is an algorithm which basically ensures that we understand who you are, what you want to do, where you want to do it, what's your pain point when it comes to salary or location, and to match it then in a seamless way. And that's for us the driving factor. Since the beginning, we are trying to build a software which really ensures that you don't need to touch anything there. And that's why we also have on our platform around 80-85% of the jobs, they just run automatically through the system, meaning there is a company placing an order in our company app. Then we do match the talents sign the contracts, the talents get a payout after 48 hours, like 10 to 14 different operational processes, and they are all handled automatically. And I think that is for us the main driver. We do also see some benefits in changing a bit of how those jobs are perceived and structured. That's one of the things I was mentioning, saying this can also be done via an employmentship, a very flexible employmentship, but still an employmentship. And I think that those are the main drivers for us. It's a tech company. We don't want to build a dinosaur again, but we rather want to really focus on building this tech platform for a world of work which is changing.
And I think this is a big element of the disruption that's happening as well, Frederik, this element of change. And it's so amazing. A lot of the sort of startups with the shiny, very trendy sounding outward appearance, there's a lot of manual processes internally. So it's really interesting that you've actually sort of taken to the root of that and to actually get the manual processes out, get the automation, use technology, what it's best for, to do a lot of the horse work, shall we say, in terms of getting things done.
Yeah, and there are sometimes also things which are not too obvious, but you need just to test. To give you a specific example, we all didn't have a background in that field. One of my co-founders rather comes from the tech side, the other from marketing, and me from legal. And for us, it was something which we don't understand is like, why do you as a company need to select the people? Especially when it comes to fairly straightforward, helping hands kind of jobs. Why is there a reason for any sort of a conversation in advance? Why don't you believe in us as a company with our technology to make the best decision as long as we know what you need? And of course, this also comes with a lot of stereotypes and a certain bias, how companies and people in those companies select. And that's why from the early days, we said, no, there's no selection at Zenjob, right? You just tell us you need that kind of a qualification or that kind of a educational background, maybe. And that's it, right? And we will just ensure that someone will appear there and is doing a good job. And we never changed that motto. And lots of companies told us in the beginning, yeah, no, but we don't want to. And we always did in blind. We said, yeah, okay, but that's how we will do it. And in the end, everyone realized it's also way more efficient. It saved costs on the company side as well. And, you do also change a bit of behavior here and there.
Well, save costs, save time. Let's be honest about it. But this is also a sort of an element that contributes towards better diversity, because it's being chosen really based on the skills, and not with the not with the blindfold off, and the sort of the human stereotypes or human distortion, shall we say, almost in certain elements that can come through.
It needs to be everything else around it, needs to be seamless and relaxing almost. That's why I think technology can play a huge factor in that. And you just focus on your job, you focus to meet the colleagues over there, and you focus on what you need right now, whether that's for a short trip or a present, or whether that's to pay part of your rent. But in general, there are so many processes we saw which are just unnecessary and no one is enjoying them. Therefore, why can't you automate it?
Absolutely. And what are the benefits for individuals? Say if I go on the Zenjob platform today, I say I want to do a bit of warehousing work, put up my abilities, skills, and expertise on there. What's the sort of the benefit for me from a personal perspective?
I think one of the benefits is that first of all, you have someone at your side who's basically not just taking care of everything in terms of automated processes, but also in taking care of you. What we saw, also thinking about our studies again and talking to lots of students at universities, is that you are more or less there on your own. You just run around, you go from restaurant to restaurant. 2 of them say, no, we don't want you. The third one said yes, but then in the end, they kick you out maybe after 3 weeks, even though they're not allowed to do so. And to have there a strong partner at your side where you have a very, very strong, which we are very proud of, talent care team, people here inside taking care of all of the individual problems, I think that is already a great benefit. Then second, because of technology, it enables also us to pay fair, and not just fair, but also above fair. For us, minimum wage is not really a topic, but it's rather to understand what can we do on top of that, to bring some dynamic factors also in those pricing areas. So basically to understand, when you as a talent, you go the extra mile and you do something extraordinary, you can also get paid in that way. So I think the idea of fair payment, of control about your work life, those are the main drivers which brings talents to our platform. In the beginning, it's just students, but also now people who are, for example, partially employed on the side, and they do want or need to earn also some money. Additionally, I hope at some point, we can offer this product to everyone, basically, from people in school up to engineers, because in the end, that's what we believe makes sense. I think it's still important to mention that doesn't mean that everyone needs to work in that way. And I also don't believe this is going to happen. I just see there will be way more diversity, and there needs to be a strong tech solution for that.
And this is an opportunity for people as well, that to be able to meet their needs, requirements, and desires about what they want out of the workforce. I think you rightly say for a lot of people, a 9-to-5 situation, 5 days a week is perfect. That's what they want. But the statistics are showing us that an increasing number of the workforce want more flexibility. They want more choice. They want more diversity. The number of employers they can work for, the times when they can actually work that fits in with their life work balance as well. So it seems to be catering to those needs, Frederik.
There is also a change in the mindset, and I think that is quite interesting for us also when you talk to different stakeholders, meaning when you talk to our talents, they enjoy it a lot. They say, it gives me so much freedom. We sometimes still get handwritten letters here to the company saying, it really helped me out in that situation, and I enjoy this flexibility. If you talk to the other side, for example, political stakeholders, you often realize flexibility still equals a decision which was put upon you, which was forced on you by the employer, and not because you want that. And that is quite interesting also for us when we are engaged here on the national level, or as well as on the European one, that you see there's still like quite a conflict, because we are right in the middle there, right in the middle of understanding this is something, especially the next generations will enforce themselves because they want it and not because it's forced upon them.
Yeah, and I think you're on a great point there, and it's interesting about sort of the German situation, but also more broadly that there seems to be people led, sort of the decision makers and opinion formers from the kind of top down traditional approach. They seem to be a little bit slower in actually grasping what's happening and maybe having a framework and a policy environment which fits the needs and wants of the talent of today.
There's an ongoing big discussion, exactly like you mentioned. And one of the big ones is freelancing versus employmentship.
Yeah.
And there is a big protection when it comes to the, let's say, more classic approach of employmentship, which I do understand. I think it's also a danger there. You need to be very cautious, and if you are a EU or German stakeholder, to understand what kind of routes do you want to change there. So I do completely understand the bigger picture. However, I still believe if you think freelancing is the best solution for that, then at least that's something you can challenge. Because of course, as we are following the employmentship approach, we don't believe that often those kind of jobs are made for freelancers, but it's rather something where we need to find a solution which is somehow in the middle. And I think that is also something the European Commission took now quite some time to analyze and to understand. Did they come up with a solution where we believe that's the best one? No. But then again, because we are coming from the employmentship angle, I think in the end, it must be something where everyone can stand behind with, whether that's from the employee/freelancer side or the employer side, but it's something which fits in the 21st century in the way that you organize, you are self-determined and you organize the way of work like you want. But I think it's also a discussion which will, which will follow us now for the next couple of years and decades.
I think it will, and I think the change that's going on needs to have a set of rules and regulations that are fit for purpose, that allow people to have the freedom and choice that they want. And I was speaking with someone the other day, and they were mentioning the issue of diversity, that we traditionally talk about diversity in terms of gender and also race, nationality, but also the diversity in terms of how people want to work, and either flexible contracts, freelancing, or traditional full-time job employment contracts. The diversity for people to be able to choose how, when, and where they want to work. And I think this is something that needs to be sort of brought on board, certainly by the politicians. And it's the job that we've got, I guess, to be able to educate them that it's not the dystopian nightmare that some people think it is, but it's responding to the needs and wishes of the population.
It's for sure not a black and white situation, but where are lots of gray areas, and it will be always very individual also for everyone, as the situation in your life is going to be always very different. And I just hope that we can continue go down that road and understand what are the parameters we understand and we want to define by saying, okay, that is now a freelancer, that is now an employmentship, but we move a bit away from what we just had in the last 100 years, because it will be over time tougher and tougher and tougher to just distinguish always between the two of them. Especially when technology comes in place, especially when you can work now from everywhere, especially when you talk about micro tasks or work. You can always see it in a good or in a bad way, how amazing it is when you are 14 and you're 16 or whatever, and you just suddenly, because you're doing something in school, and you have a 15-minute project, and you instead of back in the days you were just handing out the papers, right? in the front yard, and now you just have some little micro tasks here and there, and isn't that amazing? But at the same time, of course, you can also say, oh, because now the job gets like basically chopped into very, very tiny chunks of little work. And so then again, right, there needs to be rules in place, also something we are in favor of. I think it shouldn't be Wild Wild West, but at the same time, everyone needs to acknowledge that this is happening.
And I think you're absolutely right about that element there, that, you know, stable, forward-looking and respectable platforms and operators, they do want rules. They want protection for workers. There's no one wants to abuse the people that at the end of the day are the lifeblood of their business. They want to see them happy, paid in a fair way, respected for the work that they do as well. And I think that's an important point, that the element is that not trying to just get away with what you can and treat people badly, but quite the opposite for the standing, status, and branding of the organization, the platform as well.
That should be the goal. And I think, you know, the awareness is now there. It was not the same 5 years ago. People do understand it's something which is also driven by a younger generation. And now also older generations see the benefits in there. I, of course, you know, we very much believe that this is going to continue. Otherwise, our business model also wouldn't make any sense. But I think flexibility is something here to stay, obviously. We just saw in COVID how things can also accelerate when it comes of how you organize your work and from where. This will be more fluid over time. And I just hope that whether that's Germany or the EU or globally, that we can find solutions basically made also for a world of work, which is a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say, Frederik, that organizations and companies are adapting to this new reality in terms of how to actually sort of use platforms like yours to be able to bring in the talent that they need when they need it, and on open and fair terms?
Yes and no. I would say there is certainly an understanding that it makes way more sense also to leverage platforms like ours in certain situations when it comes to a high demand because of Christmas peak, or because of inventory, or because of a summer season in the event business, or because of sickness, sudden sickness of your full-time employees, things like that. I think in general, there's still quite some hesitation, though, to the topic, especially in Germany. When you talk about temp work, this still has not the best connotation. I do understand also where this is coming from, because there's also quite some shitty temp work happening. But I did also learn over now the years, there's also quite some amazing stuff actually happening, and people are often very happy also when they are in temp business, because if they chose to do that, right? And so I think, yes, on the one hand, there is some change, but then on the other side, there's still a certain stigma to it, and we will need some time to understand how can we bring both sides together. And just understanding that this is going to be part of the future, and it's actually a good thing. And one of the things of how we can do this is that we build strong business cases. I hope obviously that Zenjob can contribute to that and showcase a bit of how it can be done. Not everyone will be always happy. We also have talents who will, you know, dislike us for something and have negative feedback, and I think that's also okay and very important, and we then can learn again from it. But at the same time, I hope that we can, you know, to a certain level, pioneer there and showcase of how it can be done, and then others will follow and will interpret that also in their way, and then we will slowly get there. Because, you know, I guess, as you know this better than I do, there will be no way back anyway, so we need it.
We need it. This is the future. It's either accept it and harness it, or it's going to just roll over you. I mean, I think this is the reality within these things as well. And I think it's interesting on this this branding and kind of the reputation issue. I think we see it in a lot of different companies and organizations, but also at the broader societal level, that people see these words as kind of platform, temp, gig work as something that's kind of second class and not so good, even though that, you know, realistically, independent contractors work in everything from the IT sector all the way through to the building branch, artists and musicians. And, you know, it's very interesting from our study that's coming out in October, that the huge percentage of people who are enjoying it, but actually earning more than 5,000 euros a month through what you call sort of gig and temp work. And I think that this kind of reputation element is something that needs to catch up with the reality of what it is today.
And in that sense, platforms like the Fair Work Foundation, for example, I believe will also help with that, like initiative together with the Oxford University and Berlin and others to understand how are platforms organized when they offer work. And I think, you know, what they do, for example, they go a bit away from just looking at employmentship or freelancing or so on. They just look at the general working conditions.
Yeah.
And that is something which will be the main driver of understanding if there's fair work provided or not. And I think that is actually a good idea. There can be even more of those institutions, or there can be a bigger one out of that. I don't know. But in the end, I think that helps a lot. Also, you can have like tough conversations with them as well. And then they challenge you in a certain regard. And that's what's going to help us in the end to understand, okay, how do you need to organize it? But you know, if you just go back always to what was there before, then you suddenly quickly realize it's not made for that. Like the setup, sometimes the legal setup is just not made for it. And what do you do then, right? As a young company, you try to find solutions, and then at some point you need to justify them, or you don't. But I hope it will always disrupt a bit the way we see those kind of engagements. And yeah, we did this here in Germany, but I know also lots of other platforms did it in their relevant countries, and it will continue. That's for sure.
Excellent. No, I absolutely agree, and I think that we're at the start of something, not the end of something. But I think the continual evolution, changes, and process as time goes on as well. I think this is not a set, but rather a moving target that we're working towards as well. And as I think as everyone feels more comfortable and learns more about what's actually happening to meet their needs as well, I think the whole sector will evolve over time, because we're still quite at the early stage of this right now.
And the behavior of employees or freelancers will be also the major driver in that. We see this already. You know, even though if we look at applicants internally here now at Zenjob, so the ones who are doing marketing or sales or legal or whatever inside of our company, and you check those CVs and see what they did before or what they want, what they aspire, you see already there's a completely different behavior, and people spend a few years there and a few other years there, and then there is a study in between, and then there is maybe some work and travel, and I don't know what. And I think, you know, that's a good thing. And this will be something which is going to be ongoing. And that behavior will also dictate of what companies will need to offer to ensure that with the shortage of supply, right? I mean, that's something, at least in Germany, which is very certain now for the next decades to come, is we will not have enough employees. That's pretty simple. Basically, we will just not have enough. And that is something where all of the companies need to understand, how do you tackle this now? Because we also want to ensure that it's still going to be that we are prospering here in Germany, and that it gets bigger. And otherwise, you know, the whole system doesn't work. But at the same time, this will be quite a unique situation after World War II, where we need to face a situation like that, where we realize there is a shortage of people, there is a shortage of supply, if you want to call it. So I think even in that sense, companies, employers need to be way more creative than they have been in the past, not by saying there is a ping pong table and a kicker, and not just there's a fancy fruit basket, right? But there's like a proper understanding of a holistic engagement of what do I want to offer, and to be honest, also what I don't want to offer, right? I think that is also something which gets forgotten quite often, which then corporates try to copy from startups by saying, yeah, let's do all of that, but in the end they don't really live it. Culture, values, right? A very important thing for us, for example. But you really need to understand how often do you ensure that this is lived by and mentioned again and again and again. Otherwise, no one is going to believe it anyway.
Exactly. People don't read, they don't listen, so you have to keep on saying it over and over again. But it's really interesting to follow the journey that Zenjob is creating, and the growth of the sector as well. And really appreciate your time today, Frederik, for sharing your experiences, but also your thoughts on what's happening, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you, Glenn. It was a pleasure, and talk to you soon again.
Absolutely. Thank you.